Hello, my fellow Cassia coworkers. My goodness, what challenging times we are finding ourselves in. And in response to all of the needs that we are responding to because of COVID-19, we've decided through Spiritual Life to put together a series of videos to support each other in building resiliency. I am Chaplain Sarah Ciavarri, and I have the blessing of serving at our Apple Valley campus. I have been in that role for about 13 years now. And if you're like me, through your work with seniors, you've noticed folks who inspire you with their ability to bounce back, their ability to experience very hard things in life, sometimes even trauma, and to be able to get through that with their heart intact, with their sense of purpose and meaning so clear in terms of who they understand themselves to be and who they feel called to be in their faith, or in service to their neighbor. And so we're going to share a series of videos with the goal of none being longer than 15 minutes, so that these are accessible and easy for you to watch on your lunch break or to watch at home. And some of the practices that I'll invite us into, you can do with your family or your friends. So if this is useful and helpful for you, take it beyond our Cassia family. So I have long had an interest in resiliency. I think because I've been so inspired by elders for many, many years, and also my own grandparents, listening to their stories. And so if we had to define resiliency, I think a lot of us would say things like it's the capacity to bounce back. It's the capacity to keep going. It's like being a rubber band and not being a pencil. Like a rubber band can stretch, it can change shapes, and where a pencil, it's put under so much. When it's put under so much pressure, it will eventually break. And so, if you think about resiliency, is really the ability to bounce back and to get back on our feet when things are hard. Now, the good news is we can cultivate resiliency. That is excellent news. It's not like you have it or you don't. It's something we can grow in. And when we're really honest with ourselves and each other, I'm sure we can all name seasons in our lives where we felt we were more resilient. We just felt like, yeah, we can handle this. We've got it. We have a sense of a future with a hope. We have a sense of agency that even if we don't know the answers, we can figure it out. We've got people who can help us get through it. And then I imagine each of us have had seasons where our resiliency is really low and we feel very challenged in our ability to keep going. So, wherever you find yourself today or when you're listening to these videos, please be aware if some self judgment creeps in. And just really notice it, but let it go, because we're all in this together. And, you know, how we handle something today, our capacity to handle it today might look different than it will tomorrow. So I'm a firm believer that God gives us what we need in the community of faith together. So let me give you a bit of a background about this whole resiliency movement. Maybe you've heard about resiliency beyond just our work together at Cassia, and I'm going to share my screen with you so we can really just get this going. Oh, goodness. Okay, here we go. Okay, so Dr. Bessel van de Kolk is a psychiatrist, and his definition of resiliency is a little more tied to trauma than the definitions that are often associated with resiliency, which are usually things like the ability to bounce back or the ability to keep going. And he simply says resiliency is the ability of the imagination to project into the future a positive reality beyond the stresses of trauma. Now, he worked with children who'd been in a daycare. just across the street or just down the block from the Twin Towers. And so he worked with preschoolers who saw the towers fall on September 11th. And one of the ways you work with really young children through trauma is you have them draw what they saw or experienced. And so, as you can imagine, there are lots of drawings of people jumping out of buildings and smoke and fire trucks coming. And one little guy drew kind of the same picture week after week. And then one week he drew on the bottom of the picture like a pancake in the corner, kind of like an oval. And Dr. Bessel van der Kolk said, well, tell me about this. And the little boy said, well, that's the trampoline. So when people jump out of the building, they can land on it, bounce off, and land on their feet. So when I've heard him speak, he shares that as an example of what resiliency is, this ability to imagine a future beyond the stresses of the present trauma. And so when we think about COVID-19, we hear a lot of people talking about, we're going to get through this, we're going to get through it together. And that's a way to help us all project beyond what's going on right now. So a quick background about the whole resiliency movement or positive psychology. And it's rooted in Dr. Seligman's research. He's out of the University of Pennsylvania, and there's others certainly doing this work. But about 40 years ago, give or take a few years, I think, there was a switch in psychology. It used to be focused more on pathology. What isn't working for people? What's not helping people live wholly or as well as they could be living? And so he got curious about when people are living well, when there is a sense of well-being, a sense of purpose, balance, connection. What is going on when that is happening? And so this whole movement called positive psychology developed. And if you are curious about that, there's all of this research about when we are living well, if we feel like we're in flow, feel like we're flourishing, we're using our gifts. In Christian faith, we talk a lot about using our vocation, what God has given us. So Martin Seligman is really the pioneer in this work. If you're curious about his work, you can find lots of information on the internet. But out of that has spurred this whole movement. And let me tell you a few of the things, as you see on the screen, that are important about resiliency. Why does it matter that we can keep going, thinking about a future with a hope? It's because greater resiliency through the research leads to improved learning and academic achievement. Resilience is related to lower absences from school or work due to illness. It contributes to reduced risk-taking behaviors, including excessive drinking, smoking, and use of drugs. Those with greater resiliency tend to be more involved in their community and family activities. Higher resiliency is related to a lower rate of mortality and increased physical health. If you look at that and we sit with this slide for a moment, it is so profound how developing and cultivating resiliency can be in our lives to really help us serve and lead in ways that benefit other people and ourselves. So you'll notice this great beach ball down in the corner. That simply means that I am using this slide from the Bounce Back Project, and they've done a lot of research on resiliency and more to come about resiliency through their work. Okay, so there are 5 pillars of resiliency that we're always going to be returning to as we're talking about this. And these 5 pillars or 5 domains, 5 spheres are self-awareness, purpose, mindfulness, relationships, and self-care. So starting at the top with the blue, let me talk. I'll just say a few sentences about each of these to give us some foundation, and then I'll give you one practice for today's session. Self-awareness. Do I know what I'm doing, and do I have a sense of why? When we cultivate self-awareness, we have the ability to think about our thinking. That's called metacognition. When I think about how I think, it's metacognition. Am I simply reacting emotionally, reacting. And when we are unaware of how we react, that's when we're in danger of doing things that are out of alignment with our values. That's when we're in danger of doing things that um, later we have to circle back and say, I think I missed you in that conversation. Can we give it a try again? Or we, maybe are short with our children or short with someone, a friend or a spouse. And when we reflect on that, we realized we were short with them simply because we were trying to get rid of uncomfortable emotion. So maybe we're stressed, we feel overwhelmed, we might kind of explode at somebody else, which of course increases when we're stressed. And so if you find yourself in that experience more since we've been in COVID-19, please know that that's happening in 100,000 homes across the US. And um, we're all figuring this out. So self-awareness helps us hit the brakes and say, okay, let me I gotta take a breath. I want to act in a way that I'll be proud of in 2 days or 3 weeks. Okay, purpose. Having a sense of inner drive around how we serve, how we work, what we do. Okay. Mindfulness. Again, it's just being aware of what our emotional state is, and not trying to ignore or avoid or deflect difficult emotions, but also not getting stuck in them to the point that we are paralyzed and can't make decisions. We need to be able to make decisions to move forward. And the best way to do that is when we are grounded and we are rooted in, again, that purpose. So I think for Cassia, our purpose is to serve elders and others in need in Christ-like love. And so that's always what's going to be grounding us. Relationships. Are we connected to other people? Do we feel fed by the people we spend most of our time with? I would also say relationships. It's relationship with God and also with ourselves. Self-care. I will dig into that in the next video. Self-care, basically the question is, am I doing things that feed me spiritually, mentally, physically, that are good for me so that I am refueled, my tank is filled up, I can go back out there and serve. So those are our 5 pillars. Now let's turn to a final practice. This will be our final slide for today. Isn't that beautiful, first of all? And this is by Vonda Dries. You can find her work on the internet. She and I, maybe 3-4 years ago, I was leading an event and she was there as a graphic facilitator. So what that means is she creates art based on what she's hearing, seeing, experiencing in that room. And so I was walking the participants through an exercise that comes from our Dare to Be Resilient workshop, which is giving ourselves permission. And this was this beautiful slide that she created simply out of what she was experiencing. So I give myself permission to create from my joy, my soul. It could be a few different things, couldn't it? Based on our perspective. So Brené Brown has researched a lot of things like courage, shame, vulnerability, and all of those are connected to resiliency. And so in her research, she found when people were willing to show up, be brave, try, dare, lead, all of which we are doing in COVID-19, they gave themselves some type of permission. So, meaning they allowed themselves to be seen a little bit more authentically or a little bit more real, carrying a little bit more realness. So, a permission slip might be I give myself permission to share with my spouse, I am tired, overwhelmed, and I don't know what to do. Or it could be I give myself permission with a coworker to tell them I could really use some encouragement today. Now, of course, we want to do this with people that we feel safe with and that can hear what we're saying. It could be asking for help. It could be um, saying, I don't know in a meeting, even if we say like we should pretend like we know, like everybody else knows, but I don't know, so I'm just going to pretend. No, the permission might be give myself permission to be honest about the things I don't know. It could be I give myself permission to wait to send this email, even though it's like beautifully crafted and I just have so much kind of hard emotional energy around it. Basically, I'm angry and I'm just going to get this email out there. No, maybe the permission is I'm going to wait 5 minutes and then I'm going to revisit this email so that again, we are acting out of integrity and authenticity and not emotional reactivity. So for the next week, I would invite you to practice this permission slip exercise. Again, one, two, threes, resiliency can be learned. That is good news. It's not a you have it or you don't. It's a we're growing in it every single day. This is a way to practice that. Number two, resiliency grows when we're doing it with other people we enjoy being around. So why don't you ask a few of your coworkers to just do this exercise together, or someone in your family or your friend group? And three, there are no right or wrong answers with this as long as, let me give a caveat, as long as it is helping you show up in who you are, who God created you to be. It serves other people. Um, and it allows you to bring the best that you have to our work together at Cassia. So I'm going to close this out again. Okay, so I think I'm back now. And so, in conclusion, I would simply say that we can grow together in resiliency. This is our first practice I'm putting out there for us to practice together. Let me know how it's going. And when you need some coaching or if you want to dig a little bit deeper, we have resiliency workshops. We're doing them virtually until COVID-19 is all finished up. And you also have the opportunity to do one-on-one coaching with me. It's all confidential, and the whole purpose is to support you as a person and you as a leader in Cassia. So thank you for all of the good work that you do, and God bless our work together.